Alrighty, we are live. We'll go ahead and give it just a minute for a few more people to join the live stream, and then we'll go ahead and kick things off. Okay, cool. Well, this is being recorded, so that's great news. Excited to welcome everyone to our first Hint Summit extended talk. This is going to be a talk that's going to be kind of following up on the conversation that Stephanie, myself, and who was it? Dr. Oh my gosh, my mind's Dr. Charlotte Clark had at Hint Summit about ICP and what it looks like to build out your ideal customer profile as a direct primary care practice. Today, a lot of the feedback that we got from that is that we'd love to learn more about this and dive into the employer realm of things. So today, I'm more than happy to share a bit more on that. We brought in a couple of experts around this. So allow me to introduce first Stephani McGirr, founder of EGS Marketing Solutions and Amplify DBC. She was part of our initial panel, and then also Travis Bockenstedt, President and Chief Experience Officer at Pinnacle Advanced Primary Care. For folks who don't know Travis, he's been in the DBC world for over 6 years now. He's had a ton of experience growing DBCs, particularly two that we'll talk a little bit about, and working with employers through that growth. And at Pinnacle Advanced Primary Care, he's been there since I think October of 2021. It sounds like. And if you're not familiar with them, check them out. They are one of the fastest growing DBCs in the nation, and doing so a lot through employers. So really excited to welcome you both on to the call today.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Awesome. So to get started, let's do a quick recap on what we did at Hint Summit and the ICP space. So let's just quickly remind everyone what is ideal customer profile and why it's important. And we'll start with you, Stephanie.
Sure. So that ideal customer profile is basically who you want to work with. Who is your favorite member in your panel? If you could put them on repeat or clone them, what would that look like? What are their target demographics? But we go deeper with that, and we create a literal avatar where we're talking about, who they are in particular as a person, getting into their pain points, their desires, and the more layers deep you get, the better you can identify with and connect with them in your marketing messages.
And Travis, why is that so important as kind of a DBC leader? Why is it so important to make sure you have an ICP?
Yeah, I think it's important because, as business owners and entrepreneurs, we like to say everybody's our customer. Well, that's not really the truth, right? You may have customers that are kind of, from kind of fringe different categories that you work with. But when you really look at it at the end of the day, you will see trends. You will see the buying trends of people who you can close. And ideally, if you have that ideal customer, it should drastically shorten that sales cycle for you because you're speaking the language of that person that you're trying to go after. So just keep that in mind. Not everybody's your customer, and not everybody's a good fit for DPC.
That's great. That's a great way to explain it there. So what we're going to talk a little bit more today is diving into the employer space. And if you're interested in learning more about our conversation around how ICP works for your practice, and specifically around retail, I encourage you to go check out the video recording. It's in our Hint community under Hint Summit 2024. You can give that a watch and get caught up there. But as we focus a little bit more on your ICP for employers, is I guess the first question kind of going to you, Travis, is who do you see as the ICP? Like when you're looking at an employer, how do you identify an ICP, and how do you maybe break them up based on the size of the company you might be looking for?
Yeah, absolutely. So in direct primary care, I would say we sort of have 3 to 4 sort of verticals that we can go after in this space. A lot of direct primary care clinics will start in the retail consumer space. And I'll admit, it's a really great space to get your feet wet, to start into DPC and start to learn that and get your workflows going. When you're ready to jump into that employer space, you really have to understand, one, a little bit about their plan structure, because that can change the motivation of what they're trying to get out of DPC, and then also that company size. As we talked about in our planning meeting up to this live stream, was in that business space, I feel like there's sort of 3 verticals. We have our solopreneurs and under 25. So these are small mom and pop businesses that are like the salt of the earth business that you want to work with. And quite often they can make a decision on those sometimes in the meeting when you're with them, or within just 30 to 60 days to close that. So I would recommend, it's a really great place to start. Then we sort of look at the 50 and aboves, where employers are required to have certain plan structures made to meet some certain ACA plan requirements. So when you get in the 50 plus range, you're probably going to be working with a broker. You're probably going to be working with a health plan, possibly a self-funded health plan. But each of those sort of verticals really have their own motivations. The smaller you get, they're probably doing this because it feels good to offer a great benefit to their team that's affordable. When we get into the larger clients, it's like, yes, this is a good benefit, but how are you going to save some money for me? So that's how I would sort of look at those verticals and that ideal customer profile within each of those.
Awesome. And Stephani, if we kind of like look at your experience working with a lot of different direct primary care practices and building out their retail ICP, how does this kind of vary drastically from that retail ICP?
Well, if you think about the purpose of building out the ICP, where you're getting into their pain points and how you solve those pain points, it's a very different avatar or ICP that you're building, because you're not talking about the individual person who's coming to you for health problems. You're talking about a business owner who needs to solve their business owner problems of providing great health care to their employees as a retention model. So it's like a 180 complete difference when you're talking about the direction of your messaging and how you build your campaigns.
Absolutely. And when we're thinking about the way that we target these folks, and you think a little bit about the retail world, it's pretty niche, right? We talked about how you have this ideal avatar and you're really building a lot of your content and marketing around that ideal avatar. But when you get into the employer world, it can be a little bit broader and bigger. And thinking about the targeting, what are some of the different categories, if you will, or verticals that you found success with, Travis, in the employer ICP world?
Yeah. So when I look at sort of some channels that you can use to reach these folks, again, let's look at the use of social media. I think you will find, and also this can be built on a little bit, that my small businesses are on Facebook. So I made a conscious choice as a business development person, and you can do that too as a practice owner or manager, is how can I use my personal Facebook page as a way not to complain about the world, but as a place to build my business. And you're going to find a lot of landscapers, friends that are running their small companies, and that's a really natural place to appeal to those folks. So a little thing we launched is doing video testimonials with a mobile phone and a little microphone, right, of our small companies and putting those on Facebook. When we look at our LinkedIn presence, that's where you're going to want to start playing if you want those larger clients, those 50 plus, maybe even a 25 plus. That's where your C-levels are going to be, your directors. So there's kind of two different voices, right? We do a lot of our community outreach and what we're doing on Facebook, but on our LinkedIn, we're really trying to have that business voice. And I would say too that if you want to get into the business lane, you have to be very conscious about it. It's very easy to fall into the retail lane because that can kind of be a gravy train of revenue for you where people are word of mouth, right? So I think at some point you have to be intentional about, if you want to shift over, how do you shift that digital marketing you're doing for the individual over into the employer lane? And Stephanie can tell you it takes a lot of discipline to be able to go after a target vertical, because it's not going to happen in 2 months. I wish I could tell you that. This is a 3 to 6 to 12 month long game that you're going to be playing.
Exactly. Yeah. It's really interesting when you think about those kind of demographic aspects of an ICP that's in the employer space. But how do you find, Stephani, asking you this question, how do you think about kind of the emotional or behavioral characteristics of these employers, and like particularly how do they differ? So as you're building out that ICP, you can think about what's going to be most important to them. You kind of riffed on that a little bit in the beginning.
Yeah, sure. Well, when you're looking at a small business employer that doesn't have an HR department or those extra support people on staff, then they are the ones themselves that are managing all of those aspects of the business. And so you can target those pain points for them about, being able to handle their business in a more streamlined streamlined and organized way by taking that off of their plate and helping them with the HR without having an HR department as far as benefits go. But when you get into those larger employees and the bigger businesses, then you have to think about the HR pain points and the other lingo that they're saying through the insurance world and all of those pain points and the struggles of dealing with the bigger plans and all of the ins and outs that goes with that. So that's where knowing your avatar deeply and understanding their individual struggles on those different levels will help you.
Can
it
I
helps with keywords too.
Can I add to that, Alex?
Yeah, please.
To that. So you brought up, Stephanie, a really, really good point, right? So one of the objections you may get, and I've had it many times, it's too complicated. I can't add another benefit. I was on the board for Mile High SHRM for 3 years, and we had a term I called an accidental HR person. This is the person that's doing accounting, payroll, dabbling in HR, and they're doing a ton of stuff. So here's a little pro tip for you guys. Use Hint as a way to overcome the objection, because I show them the business portal that we have and how easy it is to add in-term patients and manage your account. And then on those small companies, we do a lot of hand-holding with them, right? Hint also gives you that kind of 2-week grace period if you set it up in your billing, where you have time to work with that employer if they add or term employees. So Hint has some tools out there to overcome the objection of this is too complicated to manage, because there's a lot of cool things you can use with the Hint platform to overcome that objection. But that's one thing you will run into. They just get very overwhelmed adding another benefit.
Yeah, Travis, I know when we were chatting about this before, you also had something to say about cost containment specifically. And when you're thinking about kind of the different approaches, I guess you would say, or the different things that are important to these employers, right? So there's an affordability aspect, right? There's a cost containment aspect. What else are you seeing? Like, is there a health outcomes perspective? And do you want to dive into those?
Yeah, so I'll kind of go back to the point I made that not everybody is a good fit for direct primary care. If you're sitting there having to constantly in that meeting or meeting after meeting, trying to justify what we are trying to do in this space, right? We are trying to take primary care and family medicine and make it the foundation of our healthcare system. If you're running to an employer that does not see any value in taking care of their team, that doesn't see any value in making them healthy, probably not a good fit. One of our core values when we started the company 3 years ago was to have a good marriage with our clients. Once you get into the bigger employer space, now you're working on a self-funded health plan, you're working with your broker, you're working with the HR department. If you get a feeling that you have only one person bought in on the C-level team and everybody else is very much like not bought in, you kind of have to sit down with yourself and go, is this a client that we want to take in? Because yes, direct primary care can save the employer money depending on where you have that structured. But also you're seeing a trend in the direct primary care space to not have the whole model be responsible for all the cost containment, because there's much more value that can be offered. So one thing you can talk about as a value proposition, that is if your clinic is equipped to handle certain acuities of mental health, that's a really great way to kind of upsell the DPC experience, because we can solve a little bit of those issues. So I think it really comes down, Alex, to kind of the motivation of the employer and you as a team having to really think about, does this fit within our ideal customer that we want? Because you can reverse engineer your ICP and go, hey, we want to stick in these lanes because they're the best fit for DPC.
That makes a lot of sense. And it really helps to think through, when you're starting to design this ICP for employers, like which types of employers you want to work with first, as you mentioned a little bit earlier on, and then what are the 1 or 2 or 3 most important things that are going to be those benefits that you can lean on every single time. When we talk about benefit, we mean the benefit of the plan, not necessarily the benefit other benefits that might be included in the plan. That's great. So now let's talk a little bit about kind of marketing and the function around how you might who the people that are involved in these deals are. So let's say I'm a brand new DPC practice and I'm not super familiar with the whole motion of working with employers. How does your toolkit need to change when you're starting to work upstream from retail to employers? Do you want to start with that one, Travis, and Stephanie can jump in after?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I would say on that end, on the employer lane, as as you're building this out, with these sort of different motivations that we're talking about. And I'm sorry, Alex, I have like 10 things going on in my mind. Can you repeat the question one more time? I'm like,
yeah. So we're kind of thinking about,
sorry, live stream crew. Travis is like thinking 10 questions ahead.
No worries. We're thinking about the toolkit. So when I think about toolkit, and I can give an example, maybe we'll start on the marketing side if you want to kind of get your thoughts together. But in terms of like how does your marketing change in terms of, hey, when you're doing retail stuff, maybe you're doing a lot more open houses or things of that nature. So from the marketing perspective, that's something that I think Stephani can answer. From your perspective, maybe like focus on the technology a little bit and how your toolkit can change in order to be more successul with working with employers or even the people that you work with.
Yeah, thank you. So one thing I would say is that when working with employers, you want to build like a CRM light for yourself, a customer relationship management system. There's Salesforce, there's Zoho, there's so many different things out there. But what I would encourage in your toolkit as you're building that out to do that business development is use Google Sheets. Use a way to create a list of the clients that you're going after, create some very simple statuses like pending, in progress, done, lost, because put yourself back in your shoes as the business owner, right? You have a million billion things going on. As a DPC owner, you've probably been approached by a life insurance company, insurance for your commercial property, like they just hit you up. So you have to think and go, how many touch points did this take for them to get their message to me? So I would say that would be one thing. The other thing is going back to that LinkedIn tool, right? One thing I would say is that, yes, it is really great to post health and wellness content on your page, right? But they should see you attending chamber events. They should see you going to business luncheons. They should see you at a ribbon cutting ceremony. Like, so you want to sort of position that look and feel to meet that business client. Another thing that you might think about that I've worked with a few practices to do, OpenPhone is a really great tool if you've not used OpenPhone before. It is a soft phone that you can build really cool integrations. You can have MailChimp trigger a text message that goes out to set up a Calendly link. So there are some cool little automations that you can do. But I would say first and foremost, you have to be disciplined and you have to have a tool like a mini CRM or a spreadsheet to start tracking those leads, because you'll be surprised. You'll go to an event, meet a contact. You're going to look at your CRM and go, oh my God, 2 weeks have passed. I've not done my follow-up. So I would say from like a toolkit, from my point of view as a business development guy, having those things in place. The other thing is write some sales templates. You're going to be writing the same follow-up message over and over and over. Do yourself a favor, write a template, and you can just copy and paste. I would also recommend getting Calendly, because that will really help your leads schedule an instant meeting with you. And what you will probably need to do as a new startup DPC, if you don't have a team yet, if you're running lean and mean, which is a really, really great way to go, is you're going to need to block time in your clinical calendar to make sure you're just not filling the entire time with patient meetings, and sync that with your Calendly so someone can book an appointment with you right away. Thanks,
Travis. Travis, it's amazing. And this is not something that we've actually talked about or rehearsed, so this is unrehearsed, folks. But Travis is talking about all these tools and things and the CRM light, and as it happens, actually, Stephani has developed a tool specifically for DPCs that does this called Amplify. So we're not going to spend a whole lot of time on that specific product.
Yep.
We'll drop a link, and also Travis, if you wouldn't mind dropping a link to, was it OpenPhone you called it?
Yes.
If you just drop that in the comments so that people can look it up when they see there. But we'll touch a little bit more on Amplify DPC at the end there. Stephani, kind of going back to you on the marketing specific aspects of things and work with employers. What sort of feedback do you have there?
I think Travis did an excellent job at touching upon all of the different marketing aspects. So I'll just say what he said. And I like to think about it, putting yourself in the consumer seat, just like you mentioned. What does it take for you to get to a yes when you're considering a service or a system of some kind? So what does that look like for you? And think about the things that help you make your decision. In the same way, you are a consumer, so is your target client. And if you think about it in that way, you'll know the steps that you need to outline to go from the awareness to the consideration, to the yes, to the onboarding, and then hopefully retaining long-term and providing that great service so they stay with you with retention. So not only do you need to know the avatar and their pain points to connect with them initially, but you need to have that process outlined and know what it looks like, because you need to offer that next step or they won't know where to go with you. And they'll just either get lost in the marketing blur that exists all around us, or they'll go to the next thing that they see in front of you. So making sure that you've outlined those steps, whatever system and tools you use, because there are hundreds, if not thousands, available to you to be able to streamline your processes. You just need to know what that process is and how to make sure that they're taking that next step with you.
Stephani, do you set up some sales automation stuff with your clients when you're working with them?
Yes. Yeah.
Because I think that's important too for those of you who are on a team like Stephani could really help you put some things in place so you're not having to repeat tasks over and over again. So, you know, that idea of if you're at that point to work with a team like Stephani to get some sales automation in place, it can do a lot of work for you. You know, a lot of people want a business development person, but automation in the background can also do a lot of work too.
Yes, put the automation in place for you, and it takes a need for a person to manually do all those tasks away.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So there's two other tools that I wanted to touch base on real quick. The first one is brokers, and actually how you kind of identify these call them power brokers. I know, Travis, this is something you've had a lot of success with in your practice.
Yeah.
You want to share your story on that a little bit?
Yeah. So this goes kind of back to being true to your practice. Pinnacle, and I think the vast majority of DPCs are what we would call a pure DPC model, right? We're not taking insurance. It's not a hybrid model. It's really a membership-based model that you go direct to the business or direct to the consumer with. What you will find is that direct primary care cannot do everything, right? There are limitations of a full scope primary care practice. You get hit by a bus, get cancer, something like that. So when you start working with any size account, really, from a small business to a large employer, they will ask you, what about this? And if you can't offer this or a solution, it could close the door on what you of getting that business lead. I would also say that when I say not all brokers are created equal, I would say they have different motivations for the products that they are selling. We have made it a point to say, hey, an ideal broker for us would do three things. One, they understand direct primary care or they're willing to learn about it. Two, are they willing to offer alternatives along with the traditional major medical, such as a health share? We work closely with Scion Health Share. And then do they have the ability, if the employee wants it, to offer dental, vision, and some other ancillary benefits? That ideal power partner broker of those three things I mentioned are like the perfect thing for direct primary care, right? They're not going to necessarily go in and cannibalize that lead on you. However, there is a chance that the business owner could go, you know, I don't want to go with the DPC thing. I want to move ahead with traditional stuff. And once in a while that happens. We've had success in identifying in our markets kind of 2 to 3 power partners. And when I say, why do we have 2 to 3? I have some brokers that love the individual space. That's all they want to do. They don't want to handle HR departments and all that stuff. And they are an amazing power partner for getting individuals in the door. I have another broker who wants to play in the 50 or less space. And I'm like, awesome, this is great. And then I've got a third who's like, give me all your self-funded plans on the face of the planet, right? And they embedded us in the health plan, which was amazing. So I would say that that's a really powerful thing to do because you can really sort of increase your business. Again, pro tip, using Hint. If you do use the feature or have the feature of the commission tracking, we do pay commissions to our brokers that we partner with. And however, they don't get any commission unless they use the Hint platform, plain and simple. So you've got to use Hint to manage the account or no commission for you. So that's the other thing to think about too, is you structure your business lane, you're going to have to make some decisions day one and how you're going to manage that. And my advice would be you're going to want to stay within what Hint can do for you to manage that account as much as possible.
Yeah, and for folks who aren't as familiar with maybe our scale offering here at Hint, that would include those commissions which I was talking about, as well as the network management functionality. So if you're thinking, hey, as a DBC, I actually want to be able to offer, employers a regional offering around direct primary care, and I want to build on my own network, you can do that within Hint's tool as well. And then of course there's Hint Connect, which you can always tap into as well, the largest direct primary care network in the nation. So yeah, a couple of Hint tools there that are all ready to kind of support you. I love that. Now let's talk a little bit about some of the struggles, pitfalls, things to avoid perhaps when you are getting into kind of designing and marketing to your new employer ICPs. Stephanie, any thoughts around that?
Sure. I think that being too generic is one of the most common pitfalls, right? And it goes back to trying to capture everybody. The phrase we used before at the first version of this discussion was an inch wide and a mile deep, right?
Yeah.
So you get very, very specific on who you're targeting and what they need, and focus on them only, because you'll get other people, right? But the more specific and attractive to that one person or that one concept, the better you're going to connect with them. And that's going to create better results everywhere. When you can start speaking their language and know when they feel like you get them and you understand their pain points and you're the solution, it's not going to be a sale. It's going to be an obvious yes. You're the person I want to work with because you know me and you understand what I need. And that just takes the sales process away.
Yeah, I agree. And for anyone who's like, hey, where do I find that information? What do I do? Like, check out what we've done with the Hint Connect website. The way that we're speaking to employers there is a great baseline, a place to start as you're kind of drafting and thinking through how you might want to connect with employers in your area. Travis, anything to add to that around potential pitfalls to avoid?
Yeah, had this, when we were doing our planning meeting, talking with Stephanie about how do you take that step into a space like Stephanie? How do you take that next step into working with a marketing partner or professional, right? I would argue I would spend a few months hitting up some networking groups and telling your story, because it's the no's. And by the way, in business development, you're told no way more than you're told yes. So that is just something you got to get used to. But those no's, you're going to walk away and go, if I just would have told this story, or if I just would have said this, or how can I take talking about DPC for 20 minutes and find a way to condense it down to 2, an elevator speech, right? But once you go through objection over objection, win over win, your brain will just start naturally to say, hey, not a good fit for me, good fit for me. And then every community is a little different. So keep that in mind. Like our Colorado Springs practice, big military town. That impacts the sale of healthcare because people have government benefits, right? South Denver, not an issue. So that's one thing I would think about. And then maybe like another pitfall or thing that people should consider is it's a long game. Even working with Stephanie, he's not going to tell you tomorrow we're going to solve all your business problems, right? It is, again, that discipline of working with her team or a marketing person and knowing you are going to have a long-term relationship with them. And if you're somebody who's starting a marketing plan on a Monday and canceling it on a Friday, that's not where you want to go. So I would say definitely discipline, get used to being told no, and use those no's as a way to continue to build that ideal customer profile, because that's what will really help you do that.
I love that. And I'll add on to that is not only is it in your conversations that you have and in your sales process, but it's also your marketing campaigns. It's all about creating something, testing it, and optimizing it based on results. And that does take time and commitment. And you don't want to stop too soon before you find out what works. And you don't want to, on the flip side of that, let it go too long and waste your time or money. So you have to know, when is the right time to move on and be able to optimize along the way. But I love what you said about taking that feedback and making your conversations better. So when you start to get into working with employers, whether it's the small ones or the big ones, you'll know the difference and you'll understand what they're looking for. So I think part of it is experience adds to the avatar. Right? When you understand what they need, then you can go deeper with them.
Great. Well, it looks like we have a question here. Ted, thanks so much for chatting in. It says, give me an ideal patient profile for a family practice doctor that is interested in lifestyle medicine. So this is, it sounds like we're going back to more of that retail member. We'll go down this path real quick, but we want to focus this conversation a little more employers. Why don't you go ahead, Stephanie? How would you kind of think about an ideal customer profile for a lifestyle medicine patient?
Sure. So with a lifestyle medicine patient, they're probably looking more for the health part of medicine, not the Band-Aid as in prescriptions and just make it, fix me, don't let me fix myself. So there's a huge difference there. That lifestyle medicine will bring in a component of somebody wanting to be proactive in their healthcare. And they're going to be somebody who wants to be a team player in it, and they're willing to do the work necessary, as opposed to the person coming in and just asking for the prescription and going on. Now, with those things, you want to find out, where are they? Because somebody in California would take it very much differently than somebody in, let's say, I don't know, Wisconsin, right? What tools do they have available to them? What other services do they have available to them? And when you know more about building that as well, you can kind of build in your practice model around that. And as far as the services you offer them, what they're getting elsewhere versus what they're not getting elsewhere. I could talk about this forever, and I know we're not supposed to be talking about retail here.
And Ted, I think it's actually a cool opportunity to share some of the work that Travis is doing with the team here at Hint. So we recently relaunched what we're calling our DBC Launch Bootcamp. And as part of that, it's I think it's about a 12-week cohort that you work together with a group of people who are looking to launch their practice and identify and go through kind of the steps involved in building a business is really what it is. And one of the talks that we do, I think it's the next one coming up, is around your ideal customer profile and defining who that is, understanding what it is in your practice. And so I would encourage you, this is a free offering, something we're doing here at Hint. If you're interested in it, we're happy to share a link to it so you can kind of join the next call with the cohort and dive into things on that side. I know we're kind of coming up on time here, so I did want to also, in addition to the work that Travis is doing here with Hint, which we really appreciate within our Hint community, is just kind of tout the Hint community again. We've gone through a relaunch of the Hint community since Hint Summit, and really encourage folks to hop in there and engage. There's a lot of great questions that are coming up, conversations that are happening around building your direct care practice, and so just if you get a chance, stop in there, check it out. We have an app through the Circle community, so that's a little bit easier to manage from your phone, your mobile device, as opposed to having to log in through the computer and the Hint app. And then I also wanted to, again, highlight the work that Stephani is doing. So she has two businesses. The first one is called EGS Marketing Services. This is a DBC marketing agency. We have a number of customers that have worked with her on it. And a big part of what those folks are doing are working to build out their ICP and understand how they market to that profile and work with them. And then Amplify DBC that we talked about briefly as well. The marketing platform, it's automation software, CRM Lite that you can utilize to help manage these leads and be able to kind of move forward with a process that's really automated and efficient. So all these tools and these folks are here to help support the DBC industry as a whole, and we're glad to call them partners and be happy to work with them. Any last thoughts before we leave the call today?
I do have one last little thing I'd like to say, going back to the ICP lifestyle person I was just talking about. I want to just wrap that up by saying it doesn't matter if you're talking about a retail ICP or an employer ICP. They will all be unique. I can't tell you what your ICP is. That's something that you have to build out based on your needs and their needs. So it's very custom and unique to not only who you're working with, but who you are and where you are.
I would say there are way more patients to go around for all of us, right? So have an abundance mindset in building your business and doing business development, because the lifestyle provider's practice would be way different than Pinnacle's practice, where we're more in that traditional full scope primary care, right? We have functional practices that we share patients with because that is their specialty. So get over that thing of that imposter syndrome, I would say. Find a community where you can call and be vulnerable with, because entrepreneurship is a roller coaster of highs and lows, and that will help you get through everything to really build your practice. and then give yourself a much longer runway than you expect, right? But if you stay consistent, you will have a successful practice and you will start to edge into that small business space.
I love it. Great final thoughts. Thank you, Travis, Stephanie, so much for joining us today. I'm excited to have you on again in the future, and have a great rest of your week, folks.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.